Hi everyone. In this video, I want to discuss about why it is important to make some high vibrational choices when we are on the ascension journey or we are on the twin flame journey, because we can't ascend or go towards a higher vibrational way of loving someone if we stay stuck in the lower vibrational like choices that I've discussed in some previous videos related to Wuthering Heights storyline, where a low vibrational form of love was existing between many of the characters, especially the two main characters, Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff. And while in the video descriptions, I have mostly spoken about Heathcliff's dynamics and a little less about Catherine's dynamics. If you look in the description section, I have mentioned a little bit more about Catherine's choices, which I feel maybe I should discuss in a video as well. So, this video is about Catherine and some of the other characters of Wuthering Heights, as well as real life dilemmas with people are experiencing in their life when they are in a marriage or they are dating someone, and when real life karmic choices and life decision related choices come up in someone's life when they are going through a phase where they're making choices of based on different parameters of their life. So, in Catherine's case, she was making some choices based on certain parameters of her life, some of which she might have discussed with Heathcliff, some of it she may not have discussed. In one of my previous videos, Ernest Earnshaw kept getting mentioned, and I feel Ernest Earnshaw, who I believe was Catherine and Hindley's father, he also had a role to play in this whole storyline. And his role, though, no one discusses his storyline again because the story is being narrated to Cathy by different sources, and Cathy is trying to figure out what happened in the past, and she's hearing the story from different people who have interacted with Heathcliff, who have indirectly been present in their lives as their servants and other helpers, and they have been narrating what was going on in the dynamics. And that's why only in some of my previous videos you do have to read a little bit of the description section to get some better context about what I was discussing there, because to get some clarifications on the parts I made some mistakes or misspoke a little, or couldn't finish the train of thought that needs to exist to understand this at a deeper level. So the train of thought where Catherine was not doing a lot of thinking or high level soul level thinking in her choices was because she was likely, firstly, she was a young girl and an immature soul as a teen when she was flirting with Heathcliff, and which many people do when you are young and you might be a unconscious or a younger soul. You don't realize, and Catherine was a privileged girl, like, right, because she was raised by a rich father and her family was quite rich, as a result of which she was a very privileged girl. She was also a very beautiful girl. So when you have two privileges related to beauty, external beauty, as well as socially you're considered to be a top level person because you have socially a lot of comforts in your life, a lot of socioeconomic advantages there present in your life. At that point of time, most people tend to be very selfish or self involved, or only looking at life at a very unconsciousness driven choice level. And this is a mistake a rich guy can also make and a rich girl can also make. And in the story of both Isabella Linton and Catherine Earnshaw, both of them were privileged girls, both of them were rich girls, and both of them had been loved by someone in their life at a good level. So Edgar couldn't have been a good father, good son, good husband, and a balanced spouse in many levels, or a balanced father in many levels, if Edgar hadn't himself got a good upbringing from his own parents. So, which means even though Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton's parents are never mentioned in the story, but the way in which their storyline unfolded shows that they were very good, conscientious humans raised by good, conscientious humans. That's why only for Edgar and Isabella, the thought only didn't occur that Catherine couldn't be in love with him or Heathcliff is manipulating her. This thought will not arise to you when you have been, in the lap of privilege of love experience with your people in your life who have loved you unconditionally, who have loved you deeply and truly, and who have not brought any intentional harm in your life. And if you had those kind of adults in your life, so their parents, grandparents, other cousins, they were all likely very simple, good natured, non harming, non distorted people with non distorted perceptions of life. And because of that reason only, when Edgar proposed to Catherine, he was proposing in good faith that here is this beautiful girl who is nice to him, who is of the same socioeconomic status as him, who is maybe also flirting with him. And Catherine, being a teenager, there are some teenagers who have a very flirty nature, and even if they don't have a flirty nature, they might have just a simple friendly nature. So Catherine was partly a flirty and a friendly girl. Again, Catherine was also very privileged in some ways. She was possibly the apple of her dad's eyes. So even though there was some cruelty there, and how did that cruelty arise in Hindley's nature, is because Hindley now had to have some of the genes. It is possible that Catherine's father, Ernest Earnshaw, was a very loving, kind soul. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible for him to adopt another person like Heathcliff. For whatever reason, there was a lot of rumor related to Heathcliff's past, that maybe Heathcliff is a distant relative of his, or Heathcliff is someone he has just adopted out of the goodness of his heart. We don't know. He could have personal motivation, he could have just an altruistic motivation of adopting a child who he thought he should adopt. But while he was doing this, Hindley was very jealous of Heathcliff, and Hindley was always mistreating Heathcliff when they were growing up. Why was Hindley so jealous? Because Hindley thought possibly Catherine, it was definitely true, Catherine couldn't have been the girl that she was, like a person who becomes very flirty in nature or overtly friendly to everyone with hints of flirting in their tendency. That person usually has that kind of a personality type where they can easily, magnetize people. Catherine was also a person who could easily magnetize people to her. So that's why she was, and that's also another reason why Catherine and Heathcliff are magnetized to each other. They both have this magnetic personality where they can both actually magnetize the opposite gender and manipulate also the opposite gender to their हिंदी में there's a saying कि अपने हाथों पे नचाना. So you can easily wrap around someone in your in their emotions and manipulate their emotions in such a way that they will do anything that you ask them to do. And this is the experience I had with my first ex. My second ex-boyfriend also was that level manipulative, but he was a little covertly manipulative, whereas the first boy was a very overtly manipulative guy. And while I was thinking that I am proposing to them, there were also many hints they had given in the relationship where they did want to magnetize me in a very covert manner, not overtly. So second one was not intending to magnetize me in his life. He had no intention of that. He was just a carefree guy at that time. So he was just exploring life, but he was magnetizing people to him via friendships as well, because that was his personality. So he is just a lower version or covert version of the first guy that I dated, who was very overtly magnetic. He knows he has this power over women or power over other people because of his smartness, because of his good looks. Same way with the other guy also, he also had a different kind of smartness, different kind of good looks, so he also could manipulate and magnetize people. Now the problem with the people who have this social advantage of being able to magnetize a lot of people is you have to be careful with whom you magnetize in your life. That is the karmic responsibility you have, being socially considered as privileged at something, or actually having a socially good advantage at something, because good looks is a social advantage, money is also a social advantage. If you have good brains and good intellect, that is also a social advantage. And God doesn't discriminate against humans, so God has given everyone some social advantage at some level. It's just that some people easily discover their social advantage at an earlier age in life. Some people take time to discover their social advantages and might take later stages of their life to understand what was the skill that God had provided to them. But there are those, anyone who is considered in the top tier of, let's say, top 30 or 40th percentile of good looks, good intellect, good socioeconomic status, good family life, all of, or good work life, all of these places are the places where God has given you a what is it called, leg up. There is a leg up you have been given in life. The realization that in the first few 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of your life only, you have understood that I am cleverer than most, or I have got a lot of money than most, or I can attract 10 guys to me easily by just smiling at them and flirting at them, or I can very easily charm people by my sweet soft nature, or I can manipulate them by making it pretend as if I'm not interested in them and then making them fall for me, which is what the first guy was doing in my life. He was making me fall for him without saying that he's in love. And why was he not saying he's in love? So that he wanted to keep this option open, that the moment if I confess love first, or if I am the one who is doing all the love related hard work, then what he is doing is he has now and this is how the devil works in all these people with extra advantages. Devil makes them shows them that you have this advantage. Now it's up to you whether you want to use that advantage against another soul. If you have used it against another soul, you have actually committed a soul level spiritual crime against them, and the crime level will be depending on how deep your manipulation was about them. That is how the devil works in those highly intellectual people, highly socially advantaged people. Devil works in different ways in different people. So depending on your advantages, disadvantages, devil knows how to work with it, how to not work with it. And devil's job is to do that. Why? Because you've come here to do to have a life lesson on earth. So the person who is privileged, their life lesson is, do you understand who are not privileged as you? And after understanding them, do you take advantage of them, or do you help them, or are you good to them? Are you rude to them? Are you horrible to them? Are you cruel to them? These are all the manifestations you will have related to your advantages. If you don't realize, or after realizing, if you want to just hold power over them, and which is what Catherine and Heathcliff both were doing. They wanted to hold power over other human beings. And Catherine was doing it with her dad. She was doing it with her, with Edgar. She was doing it with Heathcliff. She was not be able to do it with Hindley. Why? Because Hindley has no sexual interest in her. Hindley is just meant to be her brother in her life. So Hindley is not supposed to get charmed by her, fall for her charms, and that's why Hindley was not falling for her charms. But what was happening with Hindley is now his disadvantage of what was happening with their father was Ernest Earnshaw was showering all his love on his daughter. So Catherine was a very spoiled child. If you look at the storyline also, you will see she was a very spoiled child. So she was a spoiled child because the father was giving her whatever she wants. He was not ever saying no to her about anything. Then and he was more likely, when you spoil one child, the father's nature is, any person's nature, human nature is, if you're over showering something on one of your children, that means rest of your children are not getting that love. You're not equally distributing the love. You're not fairly distributing that love amongst all your children. And it's okay to have affinity, soul level affinity towards one person than the others. But while you are having that affinity towards one child, you have to compensate. Now if you have affinity towards one child, you have to give the other child some other things in order to not make them constantly feel invalidated, which Ernest Earnshaw, and I don't know if their mother was alive or not in the storyline, I don't remember now. Let's assume that the mother had died. So Ernest Earnshaw was not able to do that. And if their mother had died, that is another reason why Hindley, if the father was giving more love to the daughter, then the mother is supposed to give more love to the son. Then it gets balanced out. And if the father is disciplining the son, mother disciplines the daughter. This is how a balanced family life of 4 can happen. But if the mother is not present at all, or the mother doesn't have social power to influence anything in their children's lives, then at that time the mother can't bring that balance out. and that's why Hindley became more and more bitter, and he ended up being cruel, because then who was influencing when the mother is not available or the mother doesn't get the power? The person who was influencing Hindley was Joseph, and Joseph was a very stable hand, but Joseph was, even though he was a very religious stable hand, he was also a very distorted personality. So if you Joseph's speech itself in the Wuthering Heights book that I read, I could hardly understand his speech. His speech was very garbled up speech. So it was a very garbled up speech, firstly because he was an uneducated person, but secondly his speech was so garbled up because he had mental illness also going on, and he was a mental illness and a patriarchal personality type. So he patriarchal plus richness supporting personality type. So anyone who has money, he will support them. So initially he is supporting Ernest Earnshaw and his children, and the moment Heathcliff comes and becomes the rich person in their life, he starts supporting Heathcliff because he's just after money. He's also a person who's after money. That's why only Joseph and Heathcliff also stayed together for so long of the journey, and he doesn't consider Joseph as cruel towards him, because Heathcliff, when Heathcliff was doing something unfair, or maybe stealing, like how Catherine is getting all the father's love, Heathcliff also started possibly doing that. And as a result, Hindley got jealous of that also, that earlier if he was only the second son, at least he should be being biological son of Ernest Earnshaw, he should have Ernest Earnshaw's love, but he was not getting it. So there was this heavy karma that Hindley was also actually going through. And when he was going through, he also failed his karmic test by becoming more and more cruel towards Heathcliff. And rather than realizing that this is a very toxic dynamics that his family is having, and for Hindley actually the best reaction and response, or the highest high vibrational response to the unfairness that his father was showing, would have been for Hindley to actually leave Wuthering Heights. If Hindley had left Wuthering Heights, he wouldn't have been bothered by the manipulations of his father that both Catherine and Heathcliff were doing. He wouldn't have felt so cruelly invalidated in their presence. Joseph wouldn't have, spurned him further by psychological manipulation or other manipulations, because Joseph was that type of a personality as well. But he's a very covert personality, and because he's not rich, Joseph is also very Heathcliff and Catherine like personality. And that's why Heathcliff and Catherine were his favorite children also. He gravitated more towards them. He also gravitated towards Hindley simply because Hindley's father was a rich person. But if Hindley had left their life, he would not care about Hindley. And he eventually showed, like when Hindley was leaving his life in the sense of financially and monetarily not focusing on his life. He had become depressed and heartbroken because his wife has passed away. He was going into gambling debts and all that. At that time, Joseph was nowhere around to help Hindley in any way, right? Because his was a very selfish motivation based support or loyalty or anything. So anyways, so Hindley's best choice and best karmic path of not having a lot of grief in his life would have unfolded only if Hindley had left that place. Same way with Heathcliff also, if he had never come back to Wuthering Heights again, that would have been his best life outcome. Completely let go of how Catherine felt towards him or how Catherine had flirted with him. If he wanted to keep Catherine's memory of love as a love memory, that would have been okay, like if he had only kept her as a past love memory. But the moment he has not kept her as a past love memory, that is where he has started now going into the path of the devil. Because this is what also journey of love is meant to teach us, that at the higher level or at a highest level of love, we can feel love for many human beings in our life. We can feel deep love towards many human beings in our life as well. But if we have some higher purpose of life to achieve, if we want to evolve in life, if we want to do something in life related to multiple things, related to our individual soul's journey, in all of these cases, when we want to ascend, in love, when we want to hold a higher vibrational love, in order to learn the lesson about these higher vibrations and higher vibrational way of loving others, You have to learn to discern that love is not simply the intensity of emotions you feel towards someone, and neither is love someone intensely feeling and reciprocating that emotion to us. That is just the first basic, like, baby level step of love. The higher, a little bit higher evolved love is, you feel intense emotions for each other, but are you also, despite feeling intense emotions, if everyone is obligated or engaged in loving someone else because of whatever reason, are you ready to let them go? Can you let go of that love when you know that your love is married to someone else, has been betrothed to someone else, is seeing someone else? If you can do it, you have elevated. If you can't do it, you are not ascending, you are on the journey of descension then. So Heathcliff was not able to do that. Catherine was also not able to do that, because if Catherine has already prioritized someone as her spouse, then your loyalty has to lie to your spouse. You either stay with your spouse or you divorce your spouse, or if divorce is not possible, depending on your whatever social or other conditions, like let's say the scenario was reversed, that Catherine is married to a very toxic husband like Heathcliff, and Catherine decides to marry Heathcliff, and Edgar is her past lover. At that time, if Catherine is in a very toxic marriage and Edgar is a better loving choice for her, and she can't leave Heathcliff because Heathcliff is a very manipulative, coldly calculating person, cruel person. If she leaves, he's going to either kill her, he's going to track them and kill her, or he's not even going to allow her to leave by poisoning her or keeping her in a weakened health status so that she can't even leave. All of these very toxic, sociopathic and antisocial personality type people will do, and Heathcliff would have done that to Catherine if Catherine had said yes to her. So, and which is very much possible that in a past life Heathcliff had indeed done something like this to Catherine, as a result of which, while Catherine is very intensely attracted to him, she keeps repeatedly saying no. There is nowhere in the whole story where, even though she allows him to kiss her, nowhere in the story does she allow him to take her away from Edgar. So she was doing her right karmic role in a way where, in a past life, if Heathcliff had really tortured her and abused her, like he repeated that pattern with whom? He didn't repeat it with Catherine. He repeated that pattern with Isabella. But he could have done what he did to Isabella, he could have done to Catherine also in a previous life. And Catherine has the memory of that. That's why in this life she is not falling for him. And Heathcliff's choice was, now in this life, as a repeat, if he wants to make amends for his past life, his choice in this life, his karmic lesson in this life with Catherine was that while in the past life he couldn't let her go because she had chosen him as a spouse and he didn't want to let her go, even if she loved other people more deeply than him, in this life, when she's already, even before marriage, decided that she will marry someone else, are you able to let her go after that? Because you can give an excuse to God that, God, she was my wife, that's why I can't let her go in my past life. But in this life, she's not your wife, so why are you not letting her go? And in this life, she said she doesn't want to marry you. Why are you not able to let go of that? And in this life, another woman like Isabella, who is another Catherine-like soul, like in the previous life, Isabella was and Catherine's character were very similar. So in this life, Isabella is very similar to Catherine's old character. So you are meeting another woman who is very similar to the Catherine you knew in the past life. Are you able to now do good towards that woman? But he couldn't. He married her, he trapped her in a false marriage, he cruelly abused her in the marriage, emotionally, psychologically, and possibly physically if he has poisoned her, which is very highly likely, because it is very, very suspicious that all of these people died immediately after a few months or few years of marrying him, signing their property away to him, and as soon as he got those properties, he was those people died within, not very immediately. If immediately they would have died, the suspicion would have fallen on him. But because he didn't die very immediately, it took 6 months or a few years for these people to die. But people who are calculative murderers, they play a long game of murder. They are not very easy. They're not the murdering someone in passion kind of murderer. They are the murderer. The only place where Heathcliff's passion related murder happened was with Cathy's birth. At that time he wanted Cathy to die, the baby Cathy, but the baby Cathy didn't die. That was the only place he was showing a impulse of killing. But again, in order for him to even show that, he would have had to have poison with him, which means he was carrying poison with him consistently, which also means that poison that he gave to Cathy was also the poison he was already given to Isabella and his son. Well, by then I think he had married Isabella, but she was not pregnant yet. But it could have been something he was giving to poison Isabella as well. So he could have been doing these things, consistently. And again, the reason why his son was already born very weak was because if the husband is poisoning the wife consistently, or anyone else is also this thing is applicable to anyone else who has like a very weak child born to them. Understand that sometimes deliberate poisoning or inadvertent poison can lead to a very weak child being born to you. If during the pregnancy time you were inadvertently poisoned by certain conditions or deliberately poisoned by someone you trust, in both these cases scenarios you can have a weak child. And the poison related theory is not again a thin air theory that I'm making, but subtle hints of it is present throughout the story. And the direct aspect of it is not present in this story, because the story has been written in the form of someone narrating someone else's story. And this is how it unfolds also for many people. When covert abuse is going on, manipulative abuse is going on, you can't understand the deeper inner insidiousness of someone else's toxic nature until you are actually the victim of that person. Only the victim of such people understand deeply what happens and what goes on internally in the internal experience, because to the outside world such kind of covert manipulative abusers look like the perfect husband, perfect boyfriend, perfect ideal role model friend. Like Heathcliff presented himself as an ideal role model friend, ideal role model. In many ways, he was presenting himself as a role model citizen. And the cheating and gambling that he was doing, it was very common at that time for rich people to do gambling activities. So, but he was doing what? He was not simply gambling. He was doing unethical gambling, and that is the difference between someone who is doing. People can indulge in gambling as a good soul can also indulge in gambling. A bad soul can also indulge in gambling. How you gamble and what you do with the gambling, or what is the long game you are playing with the gambling, or anything, any vice of humans, be it manipulating another human being, be it gambling, be it flirting with another human being, be it cheating with another human being. What was your consciousness doing to you when you were doing all these choices? That is what determines how dark your soul is, what dark experience you're manifesting for yourself and another, what is the greater level, covert level harm that is going on. And for those who are like these cold calculating humans, their harm is evident after 10-20 years of someone living in their life. Whereas the harm of someone who is like just simply verbally abusive, physically abusive, you see a verbal and physical abuse happening, you decide you will leave. And if they are allowing you to go, means they were not really that toxic. All it meant was you were having an abusive paradigm with them. You were both fighting with each other, but you were at least able to understand mutually that we are fighting with each other, we are not good to each other. So if one or the other chooses to leave, even if it is very hurtful in those verbal fighting related relationship or conflict filled relationships, to separate. If you are separating from a mentally sane person, if you are separating out from a person who is at least got balanced emotions to acknowledge that I am not having a good relationship with you, at that point of time, because you're sane, because you're balanced, when you leave, no toxicity arises. It is just a karmic life experience of the mildest form, and a karmic experience where you are just simply understanding and acknowledging that while I love you, while you love me, we are not good partners to each other, we are not good towards each other, and let's mutually now be a good soul to each other by at least choosing to leave each other's company, and let's divorce, let's break up, that's it. But when two souls are not like that, or if one of them is highly manipulative, highly toxic, even if you know you think you are mutually breaking off from someone, they don't think like that. They will have mental illnesses, social illnesses, distorted perceptions, and then they will not allow you to leave, which is what was happening to Cathy. So Cathy was flirting as a teen. Many teens who were privileged teens or beautiful teens, they will flirt with others. So for her, and maybe flirting with other, compatriots her age was a common thing Cathy was doing. So for her it was nothing, and it was just exploring her teen nature, that and the teen hormone phases, you want to flirt also. You find so many people attractive that even if you're consciously not flirting, some flirtiness will happen in the way in which you speak to someone whom you are attracted to. So a teenager can be attracted to 10 different men if she had the choice of 10 different men at that time. Here in her story, she had choice of 2 men. So she was flirting with both the men, but she was actually flirting with no intention except exploring subconsciously as a teen her attraction towards these guys. But it became a love proposal from both of them, because both of them saw something in her that they wanted in their life. And then she came into the dilemma, now that I have flirted, now that I have after flirting, I flirted with Heathcliff also, I flirted with Edgar also, but Edgar's lifestyle is matching hers, that's why she marries him. And she is a selfish girl. Now if she was truly a very unselfish girl, she might have married Heathcliff. But again, when can she marry Heathcliff also? If in a past life Heathcliff had been good to her, if in this life also she understands that Heathcliff is a person who, if she leaves all her property for Heathcliff and just runs away with him, he will take care of her in a less selfish manner. But if she doesn't see that, in people have good instincts, like even if she's a teenager, she could have had these instincts that Heathcliff's love is a toxic love, or even if she doesn't completely understand it, you guides also might, if in this interaction with Heathcliff in this life her karma was to reject Heathcliff, God will not make her say yes to Heathcliff, even if she's extremely attracted to him, which is what happened with me with my first boyfriend. Yes, I was magnetized to him. Yes, I proposed in a way during Valentine's Day to him. And yes, he never proposed to me throughout the on-off relationship of ours to ever say that he loves me or he's interested in me in a way where, he made all the superficially all the promises that, yeah, after a few years let's think about marriage, this, that. But men who do that, they are never serious. If they really want to marry you, they will tell you now only that let's marry or let's make future plans. Even if you want to make a future plan of marriage with someone, you will still build towards that future plan. Like if I want to marry you, if I say I'm going to marry you in 3 years, fine, you're going to marry me in 3 years, but during that 3 years, are you focusing on at least building the building blocks towards that marriage that will unfold in 3 years? And are you doing it mutually? If you're just doing it by yourself, or in your mind you're thinking, I need to have a job, I need to have a car, I need to have a house, then only I will marry her, or my parents have told me these things you have to do before we give permission for you to marry. Whatever you're doing, you do it. But if you're not involving your partner in that equation, that means you are a very selfish lover, and you will never keep consistently doing these selfish things until you learn the lesson that you are being selfish. Someone has to come to you to tell you that you are being selfish. And that was my role with my 2 boyfriends, that while they are making up all these, it's called khayali pulao, they are making up khayali pulao in their mind that in future few years I'll marry this girl. I have told that girl that I'll marry you. But just telling someone I'll marry you is not enough. You have to show also. Whoever just tells can not go to the showing level if they don't realize that showing level is also necessary in a relationship. You just telling me one time, why will I trust you if, let's say, in the past life also you did that. In the past life you even married me. But in the past life, after marrying me, you flirted with other people. You continued flirting, you continued cheating, you continued doing other things that don't make up a good relationship. Even if my conscious soul doesn't remember my past life, you're repeating choices related to those kind of actions in this life even before marriage. Will it show to me or not that you are not serious and you're not going to be that serious kind of partner that I want in my relationship? Which is what happened. That guy was not showing in any way that he's serious about the relationship. He wants to pursue a serious relationship. He is indeed interested in building a life together. Both guys did that. So while it is true that I told them that I love them first, and one didn't tell it at all, the other told it that they did love me, but telling again doesn't make any difference until you also show and tell both are important, and showing and telling and building, all three are important. But what happens is many people watch Hindi movies or love stories or read books like Catherine's Wuthering Heights and assume that if someone is just showing you act of love, which is mimicking, like, what is a show of love? Show of love is someone giving you a flower, someone giving you a card, someone giving you chocolate, someone flirting with you. Those are all showy ways of showing love, flirting with you in front of others. These are all show of love. What is telling of love? Telling of love is people saying sweet nothings to you and saying romantic words to you. But what is the actual building of love? Actual building of love involves both partners doing something together, both partners being actively involved in doing something together. And until that actually happens in any relationship where both are striving towards similar things in life, or striving to build a joint life together in whatever way they can. You have financial responsibilities first, that you have obligations, that your father has some debt that you want to pay. You pay your father's debt. Who is stopping you from paying your father's debt? Good girls will not stop you from doing that. But in the meantime, while you're paying your father's debt, if you don't consider the girl's financial responsibilities and girl's financial limitations, or girl's parents also could have some debt that the girl needs to pay off as well. But you want the girl to selfishly marry you, and then she has to take your father's debt, but she has to forget her father's debt. Can she do that? No, she can't do that. So if you want a good girl, you have to also understand that a good girl will be responsible all around. Like, if you are responsible all around in multiple aspects of your life, and you have attracted a partner who is also responsible in multiple aspects of their life, you have to merge lives based on all the multiple factors surrounding both your lives. Then only you are striving towards a good relationship paradigm. Whereas if you're only focused on yourself and your motivations and your thing, it's only about you tend to be a selfish lover, and someone who is just merely focusing on him and his family is slightly less selfish than a narcissistic personality, where in a narcissistic personality they completely focus on just themselves. They don't even care about their family, and a narcissistic personality uses family obligations as an excuse then. Like, so there are going to be guys, and there's a Instagram page called Connection Tales. There's also Humans of Bombay, People of India. All these places have narrated stories of women and men who have been in such unbalanced relationship, where one partner is just being extremely narcissistic, extremely selfish, extremely cruel, not considering the overarching responsibilities surrounding marriage. Many people, you watch romance stories and then you assume sleeping with others is okay, everything is okay before marriage, after marriage doesn't matter. But after sleeping, there is a consequence. Why should you be sleeping with a partner? Why shouldn't you be sleeping with a partner? That is necessary thing to understand. When you should be sleeping, when you shouldn't be sleeping. These things movies don't discuss, don't analyze, don't talk about. But these are very core important factors. Because if I am attracted to a narcissist, like imagine now if Catherine and Heathcliff both been extremely selfish, why did God decide to kill Catherine or let Catherine die there? Is because Catherine was not able to resist Heathcliff's power and magnetism. And while she tried to do it, eventually that day when Heathcliff kissed her, she didn't set the right boundary with Heathcliff. So God knew this woman, after the child is born, might either run away with Heathcliff, or might either run away, or she might continue an affair, and she's not going to stay loyal anymore. This is the disloyalty had happened, final disloyalty. While earlier she was in the gray zone of disloyalty, this day she had actually shown disloyalty. So there was another reason why, he decided to. So God doesn't make whims or just based on one thing related choice. God looks at multiple angles before making a choice of who will die, who will not die. And at that time, imagine now if Catherine had lived, then what would have happened is, if she would have got completely magnetized and hypnotized and manipulated by Heathcliff into having an affair with him, she was also consciously attracted to him, so she was not ready to resist her attraction towards him, so she would have slept with him. And imagine now the child that would be born out of those affairs. Those children will be even 100 times more toxic, or at least 2 times more toxic than what Catherine and Heathcliff already are. Because you're not making love out of loving parameters, you're making love out of ego, you're making love out of lust, you're making love out of greed. You both have just greed towards each other's bodies, don't care about anyone else in your life. You're making love, you don't care about the consequences of what your attraction and love will do to other people, and you think if you make love like that with someone else, the child that is going to be born can be anything than a really crueler version of Catherine and Heathcliff. So this is all the parameters God has to check to decide who gets to stay, who doesn't get to stay. What is the overarching harm of that child that will be born, who was born out of two people manipulatively loving each other, sickeningly loving it. It was a sickening love story. People don't, and seriously, the way in which my soul completely like rejected that book, I can't tell you, because every element of that book at the time when I read it made me wonder, like, why is this considered as a classic, or why is this book considered as a great love story when I can't find any greatness in their love story. And I was a teen at that time, so I didn't understand the deeper levels of why it is not a great love story. But after that, the 30 years of life experiences I have had after reading the book the first time, 20 years of life experiences I had after reading the book the second time, all of them finally made me realize why is it such a sickening love story, and why, if someone wants to make really the next movie out of it, they need to focus on the toxic elements than glorify something that is not real love at all. There's no real love present in Catherine's choices or Heathcliff's choices. Very few elements of real love are actually present in their choices in the journey of Wuthering Heights. And in the meanwhile, while Catherine and Heathcliff were not being overarchingly loving towards other people around their life, and they couldn't understand other people's pain, they couldn't understand other people's perspective, because Heathcliff had a choice to understand Hindley's perspective. Like, okay, Hindley was cruel towards him, Hindley hit him up, so he can also hit Hindley 10 times and get over it. But he's not able to get over it. Why? Because he is that toxic personality type who's not learnt the skill of letting go. And if you don't learn the skill of letting go, I will post another video of another girl, and this is an incident which is very common in India and Indian culture, because Indian culture doesn't teach boys how to let go, doesn't teach boys how to fail. Not just Indian culture, our global winning culture thinks that if you are rejected by someone, that is a ego, that is a disrespect. When it is not a disrespect to reject you, it is not a disrespect to say no to you. So in India, there are many girls who have experienced this, that when they are very beautiful girls, even if they are not extremely beautiful also, both types can experience this. If you were moderately beautiful or extremely top class beautiful in your neighborhood or society, and some neighborhood guy, fell in love with your beauty and proposed to you, but you said no because of whatever reason you have to say no to them, they have acid thrown on their faces by these men, and that the whole woman's beauty is gone. And while the beauty is gone, the reality is those men don't get checked in the right way, they don't get punishment in the right way. They have been the ones who have been monstrous to this women on whose face they threw the acid, but the woman carries the monstrosity's effect on her face, whereas the real monster is not the woman. People will societally, looking at her face, think, oh my god, her face looks so gross, but the reality is it's not her who's the monster. She's just showing a mirror to the monster. She's a mirror personality. Some people are supposed to be mirror personalities. These mirror personalities, she's showing the mirror of the monstrosity that happened to her. Like, she had a basic human right to say no to any guy who proposes to her. Like, if 100 guys proposes, there is a reason why it says you have to kiss 1,000 frogs before you get your prince. That saying is not a futile saying. It simply means that women and men both have to do this. In a world filled with millions and billions of men and women, you can't fall in love with the first guy you meet, or even if you fell in love, you have to understand that love will be an illusory version of love or a temporary version of love. It is not going to be a permanent love, and you have to face rejection from 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, multiple people first before you find the person. It's like needle in a haystack search, but it's a needle in a haystack search of love, which is helped by God If you bring God into the picture of your narrative about understanding love, the moment you bring God, the moment you bring understanding, the moment you understand that why do I, if I was meant to find love in the first love at first sight thing, some people are meant to find it, but many people don't find the love at first sight. The reason why you don't find the love at first sight paradigm is because you are on a 8 billion populated earth. I'm not on a earth where only 100 people are existing with me. If only 100 people are existing, at that time love at first sight is more possible. If 1,000 people are also existing, at that time also love at first sight is possible. But for rest of the people, or if you have a shorter lifespan journey you are meant to navigate with someone, or there's some higher purpose for you to experience that love at first sight, then some few rare people will get the love at first sight paradigm. But rest of the 8 billion people, out of the 2 couples, the rest of the 8 billion, or out of 10 couples, rest of the 8 billion people, they are here on a earth with 8 billion people, because you have to do the needle in a haystack search of 8 billion people. And obviously you are not having a 1,000-year lifespan on earth, so you can't search 8 billion people. So obviously there are going to be many people you will automatically say no to for whatever reason. It could be a past life karma, it could be your intuition saying say no to him, it could be something unattractive about them that for you is a attractiveness quotient that you don't find in them. Whatever it is, everyone will have a very individual specific soul frequency specific reason to say no. And another person has to hear that no, because if you get stuck on the first woman itself whom you found very attractive, what if your partner is one of the attractive women who you will only, your life plan only says that you can't meet that partner until 100 women have rejected you. You have to understand 100 women's rejections, or out of 100 women some 80 will reject you, 20 might say yes to you, and then you date them and find out that or talk to them and find out of them 10 or 15 women you will talk, find out that no wavelength match is there, so you reject them eventually even after you had said yes to them first. Then the next 5 will be people you might date to figure out whether you should date them. Or if you are not the dating kind, maybe you got married to one of them, found out that that marriage is not working out. This is how you find out, because but your journey was that you have to first cross 100 women, and those 100 women you were crossing because maybe in a past life you had some karma with them, maybe in a future life you will have some karma with them, maybe you were just meant to, the only karma you were meant to learn was learn that you can also say no to people, they can also say no to you. So out of the first 80, maybe 30 said no to you, you said no to 70, or 50 said no to you, 40 you said no to, there was some mutual no's. All these things will be happening, but it is necessary part of the experience. If you don't go through understanding no, you are not a balanced individual at all, because the understanding no, understanding losses, understanding lack of win, understanding why no is valuable, lack of win is valuable, failure is valuable, failing at something is valuable, all of these you will understand it at a deeper level only when you have shed your ego. Then you understand why failure is valuable, why failing is valuable, why getting duped by someone about love is valuable, and after getting duped by someone and learning the value for it, how you now discern who to pursue, who not to pursue. If you have discerned that this kind of magnetic personality is not my type, you will stay away from that type for a while, and it is necessary. Like, let's say your life goal is not simply to say get rejected by 100 women, they were only one part of the element of your life. Like, I have got rejected by many guys on social platforms related to marriages, and those guys who have said no to me, the reason why they have said no to me or I have said no to those guys is because if I had got involved in a relationship with those people, my life would have been karmically tied and bound up in such a way that all these contemplations I'm doing in these videos, the posts I'm making online, I would have zero free time to think about this, zero free time to work on this, zero free time to do the inner work as a twin flame that I had to do. So I wouldn't have had the time to do all that if I had got involved in karmic entanglements with men who were not suited to me or who I was not suited to. So anytime they said no, I said no, or we said yes, and then we went together for a while and then our paths diverged, there was a higher purpose to that diverging. If that divergent of our paths hadn't happened, if the breakdown of the relationship hadn't happened, I wouldn't be pushed to do the inner work. I wouldn't be doing the inner work to understand deeply what is a toxic relationship, what is a balanced relationship, what is an imbalanced relationship. And I need to understand both so that I don't keep attracting toxic partners again and again, or subjecting myself to abuse again and again simply because I got attracted to someone or I found someone. And all of these, I made all of these mistakes. Whatever I'm judging here in any of these videos, I've made each of those mistakes either myself or fallen for those mistakes. So if someone was manipulative towards me, I fell for their manipulation, thinking that their words of love was enough or their show of love was enough. Or in one case, when I did marry, they were showing that they are ready to build a life with someone, but the reality again was, while the marriage happened, that was again still a show. Real building in a marriage, and that's why only there are so many divorces happening in this century, because many people do fall for either the words of love or the show of love, or the show that someone says that I am ready to build life with you, but when you in fact actually marry them, it turns out that they are not ready to build a life with you, because the kind of personality you are, the kind of a personality they are, you just don't have the tools to build life together with each other. You just don't have the tools to repair each other's injuries. You're just not compatible partners with each other. Or sometimes if you have been fooled by a sociopathic antisocial personality type person, you're not only getting fooled by them, they are also just marrying you to inflict cruelty on you for whatever garbage reasons they have. So those kind of people are existing on earth, and when you are in all these different types of marriages or different types of relationships, getting out is difficult. But if you don't get out, the life you will continue having is going to get worse and worse and worse, and you will end up being a wife of a person like a wife of a person like Hindley, who is not able to take social responsibilities related to finances and other things, and then the wife died as a result of whatever neglect was going on in that marriage, or monetary neglect, social neglect. Because see, money is one factor in leading a healthy life with a partner, but because they had a home, because they still had access to food and land, apart from money, the other factors were, if he had kept himself clean, if he wasn't gambling, if he wasn't wanting, he was also in the greed to want more and more money. That's why he kept gambling. Like when he lost money, he couldn't admit failure. That was Hindley's problem. He can't admit failure, and he can't admit that he is losing money. So he wants to keep wanting to acquire money, when what he could have done, because he had already some estates, sold some of his estates, focused on whatever estate he already has to build a life with his partner. That was what his focus should have been if he truly and deeply loved his wife. But he also loved his wife only at the superficial level of love. He didn't know the deeper lessons related to love, that in difficult times how you have to show love is very different from in prosperous times how you show love. That was Hindley's karma he had to go through, but he didn't know how to go through that karma, and that's why he failed. But in next life he will get a chance to do that. Now that, have you learned from your past life's experience that you can't just simply, if you were prosperous and now you are not prosperous, you have to learn the skill of what to do when you are not prosperous. When you had privilege, if you didn't help people of less privilege, then when you don't have privilege, are people going to help you? No, because he didn't build up that life to helping people who were less privileged than him. That's why also other people who were less privileged than him, or at the same level of privilege now as him, couldn't help him, because he didn't know how to build connections as well. He was a very selfish person. And Hindley was also selfish, Catherine was also selfish. Well, Catherine also, that life, she was, because of her selfishness, ruining so many lives. That's why also she died. And if another child was born of her, Cathy was not as selfish as Catherine, only because Catherine didn't survive. If Catherine had survived, Cathy would have been much less, lighter being than what she was. She was slight level selfish. She was not very great level. She was not selfish at all in the way she was presented in the books. So I don't feel she was selfish at all. But she would have been very selfish if her selfish mother had raised her, or if her mother had run away with Cathy with Heathcliff, then her life would have been even worse than that, and she would have ended up being a very very neglected plus selfish child. And then she would have had a sibling also who was not just neglected and selfish, but was extremely narcissistic, antisocial personality, selfishness and manipulation driven. And imagine if Cathy had that life. So compared to, whatever could have unfolded for her if her mother had survived, this was the best outcome possible for Catherine, even Cathy Linton, even though that was something that initially seems like a painful life experience. When she is going through a life review, she will understand from her life review that this was actually the best outcome possible only if she was to become a child of Catherine and Edgar. And this child, before being born also you're told this is going to be your life plan. The best outcome will be if your mother dies, the worst outcome will be if your mother or second best outcome could be if your mother survives but stays away from Heathcliff. But the worst outcome will be if your mother survives and continues with Heathcliff and then has a child also with multiple problems, much worse than what Cathy and Heathcliff have. And these are all things I have explored in my life. I have that level sociopathic people in my family who are like that, whose life review hasn't happened yet, because people present in their life are witnessing their life like how Heathcliff's life has been witnessed, where even though people saw he's a gambler, people saw he's a rogue like personality, people still didn't see that he is poisoning so many people. And that life review though God is doing, it's not that God at the higher level doesn't know what is going on. God is all knowing. God knows what is going on in a human's heart, human's brains. So God knows everything that Heathcliff was doing. But majority of the people who were soulmates of Heathcliff, who were life journey mates of Heathcliff, none of them knew it. In that life, even if they don't know it, in some life eventually they have to wake up to understanding this about Heathcliff. If at that point of time in their journey of life they have to leave Heathcliff, or they have to traverse a different life path than Heathcliff. Because what happens is, all of these characters in Wuthering Heights, they were kind of partial soulmates of each other. Soulmate is whom? Soulmate is someone who is meant to be your life journey friend for life for a while. So for at least 30 years, 20 years, 50 years, they might be your friend. So someone who's your 50-year friend is what? Someone whom you knew from possibly your childhood days. So from childhood days of 10 years of age to 50 years of age until Hindley died, Heathcliff and Hindley could have been soulmate friends of each other. But that soulmate friendship and the higher vibrational soulmate relationship can manifest between Heathcliff and Hindley if both of them were able to teach each other how you are cruel towards other people, what about this cruelty you need to bring in check when they have their they are not distorted in their thinking processes, when they are able to bring God and bring balance alignment within their own core nature of the divine feminine and masculine energy that they both possess. Because the feminine energy in both of them will see the cruelty, will address the cruelty, will acknowledge the cruelty, whereas the masculine's job is to balance now the cruelty, to understand that how do I compassionately forgive, or both of the balance masculine feminine is supposed to understand where to forgive, why to forgive, how to move on from something cruel that happened, but can something less cruel be built now. That is what someone who is experiencing real cruel life experiences is meant to understand and go towards. But if you go towards it, then you are ascending. But if the cruelty only makes you keep stuck in being cruel, or worse version of cruelty keeps happening to you, then you can't ascend, you are descending. I hope this made sense. And then Catherine Earnshaw was descending, and descending in a very bad manner, and her future progenies would have descended in worse manner if she continued to live. That's why she had to die. And this is Catherine Earnshaw's journey. That doesn't mean that every person who dies is descending and that's why they die. Everyone has a different reason for why they were dying, or what led to their death, or what was the higher purpose to their death. I'm just giving an example of what is the higher purpose related to Catherine's death, because all possible future outcomes for Catherine was going to be worse outcomes, and even Cathy and Edgar would have had a lot more suffering if Catherine hadn't died by then. So while they had the 10-20 years of grieving for the mother passing away or absence of mother in their life, that grief was still lesser grief than the grief she would have given them if she had continued an affair with Heathcliff, or run away with Heathcliff, or given birth to a toxic child, selfish child of Heathcliff's, because they were not learning the lesson of what to reduce in their toxicity, what to end in within themselves and their interaction with each other. That is the lesson they were meant to learn, but neither of them were ready to learn that lesson. And then Cathy was sent as a reminder to Heathcliff that Cathy and Hareton, they were both progeny reminders of the people he has destroyed in his life, not simply for his this life's last few decades to be good with other people, but also because for a future karma also he has to understand that what in future life, if he wants also to become a to make amends and become Catherine's husband and a better quality husband, or to become Cathy's father and a better quality father, first you have to understand where you made mistakes as a father or father like figure to other people, right? If you don't acknowledge again that I made this mistake, or you decide that no, I wanted Catherine, that's why I would do, or I wanted their money and it was justified for me to have these properties, but why? If he wanted to just be rich, he could have been very well happy with just one estate than buying 10 estates. He didn't need the 10 estates, but he was in an ego trip, that's why he wanted the 10 estates. He could have been satisfied with just one thing to bring balance in his life, but he was not understanding that lesson, learning the lesson. That's why his life was completely ruled by the devil rather than by God, because when God rules your life, God will help you in checking and balancing you, telling you that let go of this. And when God is telling you to let go of something, you have to learn how to let go also. And God was telling him, God doesn't always speak directly to you, indirectly only God is telling him to let go when Catherine says let me go, but he was not listening, he was not learning. Or his other letting go was, he could have seen Hareton being a abused child just like him, and neglected child just like him, and less caretaken and less loved child just like him, and he could have realized that he could have Hareton's presence could have brought empathy in his soul. But when can that empathy arise? When he's ready to allow that empathy to arise, when he's ready to see himself within Hareton, and when the law of one people talk about, or unity consciousness people talk about, this is the law of one and unity consciousness, that while Hareton is physically or socioeconomic status wise from a very different cultural background than his, there was still a lot of similarity between Hareton and Heathcliff. If he had understood that, he would have developed empathy, he would have been a different person. Again, if he had understood that about Hindley, he would have been a different person. Even after torturing and gambling a while with Hindley, he could have changed. So anyone can change at any point of time into a better version of themselves, but only when they are ready to change, when they are able to understand the great harm associated with what happens when you are not changing, when you are ready to accept your culpability, that I did make a mistake and that's why I have to make now amends for the mistake. That is when you have, and you have too many people in the modern world nowadays, people who are doing healing activities, they are like doing healing where they are like, I don't want shame, I don't want grief, I don't want pain, I don't want this, that, all of the negative emotions they feel, they just don't want it. I'm okay that you don't want it as a good thing when the shame's level is the level at which it needs to be reduced in your life. But some shame still has to be present. If you're being cruel to someone, I should have some shame and remorse in my soul to understand that I was harming someone else. That guilt and shame and remorse and negative emotions, if a little bit of it I don't retain in my soul, I will not make the empathetic amends towards a great harm that I have done. That's why you can't completely eliminate the darkness from the lightness of your experience. A little bit of darkness has to exist. If I didn't have the pain from someone hurting me, how will I understand the pain of someone hurting someone else? That's how I develop empathy. So if I eliminate all the betrayal trauma related pain that I had in the past with a relationship or multiple relationships, or related to cheating, related to manipulations, whatever was the betrayal I faced, if I completely let go of that experience, then what happens is, if I completely let go, I will not have empathy towards helping someone else. So I can only let go to the extent at which I should let go. part of it still needs to exist for the future of journey on earth. If I'm dying, that is the only time you can completely let go. After death, you let go completely. But before death, you have to hold on to a little bit of the pain to have the empathy towards others. You have to remember a little bit of the pain to understand. Otherwise, and you will see there are so many men, the ones who are born with autism, the ones who are born with emotional illnesses where they don't feel empathy or anything for other people, the ones who also have some physical harm related illnesses where they don't feel, if their bones are also broken, they will not feel the pain. Those kind of, they are desensitized to the pain. These are all people who didn't value what pain means, that how much pain should also be still present in your experiences of life at a minor level, or understanding of that pain needs to be held by you in order to be a humane person. And those people who are not learning that experience, that's why only now they have to learn it from a very distorted way of learning. Because if you are autistic, if you are antisocial personality, if you are a personality who doesn't understand pain or realize pain, they are going through a distorted experience of life based on the past karma they had where they couldn't understand pain at all. So they requested and prayed to God, God, I want to manifest a life without pain. So one got manifested a life without physical pain, one manifested a life without emotional pain, one manifested a life without psychological pain. But which is also a problem now. If they have manifested that life, God allowed them to manifest it for other people to learn the lesson from them, that if you don't have the pain experience related right balance in your life, how toxic a life will you have. That is what you're meant to learn from Wuthering Heights. Not that it is the greatest love story, but it is a love story where you are denying pain or you are unable to accept pain, or when you have felt the pain, you use the pain in a very toxic manner than in a life affirming manner also that you could have used. So I hope this was informative. Anyone has questions, comments, wants to open discussions about any of these karmic lessons, wants to do a little inner work with me about these experiences of their own relationship journey where they are not having clarity about what is going on, and you feel that maybe I can help you, then please connect with me via my social media platforms and maybe we can work on it in some way. Thank you very much. Have a great day.